so that anyone from the public is able to observe if they would like. And the last thing I need to do is read in our hearing script. This basically just covers the procedure for the hearing. So this is the May 3rd, 2022 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner for the city of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case numbers ZH20220059-0060-0061, 0062, and 0063. The purpose of these hearings are to allow for applicants or any opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing unless a party has submitted evidence or testimony in the form of writing or digitally prior to this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. If there were anyone here from the public, they would then have an opportunity to speak after the applicant had presented its case. I will give the zoning plans examiner, Trey Sheldon, an opportunity to provide any testimony that he would like. And then in the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application or applications, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offered in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. So I think sort of the way I had envisioned this, since we put these all together, but they're all in different locations, is to sort of go one by one. So I'll ask the applicant, and that includes Ms. Edie, Ms. Vunke, and Mr. Myers. You all can orient this presentation however you see fit. One or all of you can tell me about these. It really is completely up to you. I just want to hear some background. I want to know what the project is and why you guys think the relief is appropriate. I think it would be easier to sort of take those one by one. So, sort of tell me about, well, I mean, to the extent you think it makes sense to talk about these as one larger project, please feel free. But when it comes to the individual relief that I think is, specific for each different property, or maybe there's some overlap, I think it would be helpful for me as I write these decisions for you to talk about why the relief is appropriate, or the particular relief is appropriate for each particular project. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll have some questions, so I can try to keep things on track that way. But just so you guys know, that's how I'd like to sort of orient this as we go through. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing. In the event of any, in the event of any technical difficulties or unforeseen circumstances with our Zoom technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those issues on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with the hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing, and that'll be at my discretion. Okay, we have someone else trying to join us. Looks like a Ms. Fletcher. I don't know if that's on the applicant team or somewhere else, but she is joining us now. The last thing I need to do before we get started is to swear in all of our witnesses. And so I'll do that now, and then I'll get Ms. Fletcher checked in. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, asking any questions, we have someone else joining now as well, asking any questions, doing anything other than just strictly observing here today, then you need to be sworn in. So if that is you, if you could raise your right hand and take yourself off mute, I need everyone to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And we have a couple of people that have just joined us, so I'm going to take a minute before we get started and check those folks in. Looks like, is it Michael Survey?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm the interim executive director of Madisonville Community Urban Redevelopment Corporation.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
I just went through some preliminary sort of procedural details here, but essentially I'm going to give the applicant and any of the applicant's witnesses an opportunity to tell me about each of these projects, why they're appropriate, why I should grant the relief. I'll give you an opportunity as well to weigh in on this at the appropriate time for each one of these projects. And for the record, this is for 5334 Ward Street, 5329 Owasco Street, 5304 Wetzel Avenue, 4109 Wetzel Avenue, and 5725 Adelphi Street. Ms. Fletcher, are you with us? I don't believe that she's connected to audio. I saw her video come through. Ms. Fletcher, are you with us? Okay, so we'll give her, why don't we go ahead and get started while we see if Ms. Fletcher, does anyone know who Ms. Fletcher is? Okay, must just be a neighbor. Why don't we go ahead and get started while Ms. Fletcher tries to connect to audio. So who's going to be taking the lead here on the presentations?
Why don't you, Liz?
Right. So this project is, these 5 homes are actually part of a larger affordable housing project that MKirk started, back in 2016, I want to say. They have already completed phase 1 of the project, which was additional single family homes throughout Madisonville. This is phase 2 of the project. And what makes this a little bit different is that since this was initially bid, we've had COVID. And then also on top of that, the need for affordable housing in Cincinnati has only increased. So 2 things that Madisonville did in order to preserve the affordability and the viability of this project is they were awarded NOFA funds through the city of Cincinnati. And then when those were not enough in order to fill the gap in between the cost of building and the sales price that we are hoping to achieve here, they partnered with us, the Port, who was awarded ARPA dollars from the city of Cincinnati and the federal allotment to build affordable housing. So we are actually taking some of our ARPA dollars and stacking them into this. So these 5 homes were part of that initial project. They are located all throughout Madisonville. And our goal with this is that we want to sell these to persons that are in the 80% AMI bracket, which we think is a very huge need right now, not only in Madisonville where you're seeing a lot of gentrification, but just anywhere in Cincinnati. If we want to go over them individually, do you have any questions about like the overall scope of the project?
I don't think so right now. I think it's pretty clear. So these are all single family dwellings that have gotten some government funding. Is that right? Yes. In order to build these and make them accessible or affordable for people that are in the 80% AMI. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, and the current owner of these properties is the Redevelopment Corporation.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And the Port is the applicant and just helping coordinate with design and building.
So we were brought in to help not only because we have the ARPA dollars, but we have a little bit of additional capacity. Obviously, we've built quite a few homes throughout the city of Cincinnati, and we've got a staff at this point that we were able to take this project and very easily fold it into what we're currently working on in order to get some economies of scale.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So I think I've got a decent idea then of the larger overall project. So yeah, I mean, if you or someone else wants to walk me through each one of these, I think that there's a good amount of overlap here with what you're asking for, but it could be helpful, I think, for me to hear just sort of property by property, if that's okay, Liz.
Yeah, I think the first one, 5334 Ward, that actually is going to be the the weirdest one. So 5334 Ward, I apologize, I'm dyslexic, is a one of two homes that we're going to be doing that are single story, and that we are trying to make handicap accessible. And so because of that, we had to do a larger footprint on the lot. This is technically on a corner lot. Cornish Street is not a heavily traveled street in the city. And what we wanted to do is we did not want to shrink the floor plan in order to give the person as much room as we possibly could. We wanted to take advantage of the lot size as much as we possibly could to give them, you know, a nice home to live in. The nice thing about this one is it is going to be barrier free for the most part. The doorways and everything are going to be wide enough that you're going to be able to fit a wheelchair through them, which is really exciting for Madisonville. It was something that the community said that they were looking for after phase one. We wanted to make sure that we were responding to their needs.
Okay. And does that, there's a, so that's why the setback variance is requested, right? And so
yes, if we were to shrink the floor plan, we would be taking space out of a living room, out of a bedroom, and especially in situations where we're going with a one floor plan, we want to make sure that it's as open and as airy as humanly possible.
that makes sense.
The other thing is
parking, right?
Yes, this one does also have the same parking as pretty much the rest of them. And a lot of that is just due to the orientation of the home. We wanted to make sure that it fronted on Ward Street. And the only way to do that was to have the side load parking. And if you look at it, excuse me, it is a very decent sized parking space. Unfortunately, we just, due to the topography of the site, due to existing trees and making sure that we did maintain a barrier-free entry, we weren't able to get that parking any farther extended.
Gotcha. So,
and it is quite sizable. I mean, it's, I'd say, a car and 3/4 or a Suburban and a Geo Metro.
gotcha.
David and Liz, do you mind if I jump in, or
Absolutely not.
I have a moment?
Yeah.
Darren, okay. So as you know, I'm the architect on all 9 of these. And let me just give you a couple general things that might help clear some things up for you all and give you kind of an overall understanding of what we've been tasked to do. So I've been working on this forever, and it's gone through many forms and iterations and dealt with different people at MCURC, at the city, now with the port, with different contractors. So I've been kind of the one constant through this because we design the houses. Let me present 2 things. There are 2 basic kind of houses that you're going to see. You'll see a 2-story house, which is on 7 of the lots, and you'll see a ranch, which is on 2 of the lots. And all 7 of the 2 stories are the same, and they basically all have 40-foot long driveways. Both of the ranches are essentially the same, and they also have a 40-foot long driveway. Because early on in the project, it was decided at 40 feet for the client that was being sought here, that would be sufficient driveway. So that kind of gives you the idea where that came from. On the Cornish Street lot, which is the one, the one we're just talking about, which is 5334. Let me give you a little information on that. If you actually go down the Cornish Street, it's really not a street proper very much. It's not an alley by the terms that you would think of as an alley. It's barely maintained. It has no defined curves. There are only 1 or 2 houses that even have any connection to it down the street to the east of this. And it's more like you've run into a rural kind of setting where nothing really comes off of it. There aren't proper driveways. It's not. So in the process of trying to define what was actually the curb, as is shown on this drawing, that doesn't even really exist that much. And so one of the conversations that was had years ago, which was, you know, the setback requirement that we're getting into has to do with half of the base zoning on the side, which would make it 10 instead of 8. So that additional 2 feet that we're over is something that was kind of agreed and talked about early on in the process because of this lack of street defining. If you actually look at where the street edge is supposed to be, it's another 15 to 20 feet beyond the property line itself. So I just wanted to give you the nature that we're not going over a hard, fast line and trying to extend a driveway out further or trying to gain extra space in the house just because we want to cheat the system. It's really a kind of fluid situation on this lot. It was really kind of difficult to come to a real understanding of what we could do. And that's kind of how we arrived here, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it does. Thanks, Mr. Meyer. Just so I'm clear, I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Can you all see my screen? Google Maps. So is the parking or driveway, is it going to be over here? Is that the idea? Or is it going to be over here?
Yes.
Mr. Myers, feel free to unmute if you want to jump back in.
Thank you. Sorry about that. It would be off the left hand, which is Cornish. And if you see what I'm saying, if you go down Cornish, there are no hard driveway, curb cuts, sidewalks. And right here where if you want to back up, the pile of junk to the right, that is essentially where the driveway would come in. That group of trees and that pile of junk is kind of make a line left or right on your screen.
Like this?
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Okay, and so Trey, do you want to? It's up to you, Trey. If you wanted to wait until the end, you can, or if you want to comment on each individual property.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much summarized it per each individual request in my staff report. There are several factors for a couple of these. There's a little bit of a topographic factor as far as not having to provide retaining walls. I believe with the property you were just showing, there's if they were to make like a double wide driveway, essentially going all the way back along the side of the house, there's a really large tree right on the side of the property line, and you'd end up basically, I think you'd end up killing it. But it looks to be a very, very old like oak or maple tree there. I couldn't tell because the photograph was in the winter time. Leaves aren't on there, but anyhow, a very large tree. And the other factor here for several of these, at least for the 2-story dwellings, and Ms. Eddy may have already spoken to this, but in order to fit a stairway in, like the stringer for the stairs, there's a sort of a bump out on each one of the 2-story dwellings. And this somewhat restricts, there's room back there, so potentially a compact car or something could fit back in the area. But because with respect to each one of these, their zoning requires there to be a full parking space, so at least 8.5 feet wide and 160 square feet, which is basically, ballpark 8 by 20, which would require a full 40 feet behind the side of the house here. And they couldn't do that on these. So a couple of them have a numeric variance. Most are a special exception because some of them you could fit one car fully behind there and then part of another car, and just some of it would hang past the front line of the house, if that is making sense. When I talked with the approximately dozen concerned homeowners in the neighborhood, they were very happy that there were going to be new homes built, because in many cases these were overgrown lots. Some of them had condemnation proceedings and so on, and involved demolition. I believe, as I said, he spoke to going back, as far as 2016. But some of the people were just relieved to see these old, dilapidated places, overgrown weeds and trash and such, cleaned up. And their chief concern is that because it's not obvious to them on the card that's issued, it just gives a vague description of relief for parking, they thought that they was going to have no parking, and that therefore people would take up their space on the street. But the reality is that each of these can technically fit, can definitely fit 2 cars entirely on the private property, not hanging in the right of way at all. It's just needs zoning relief because you can't fit them entirely 40 feet worth, behind the front line of the house. So that's pretty much summarizes that aspect of it. I also did want to point out that the reason this is a concern for twofold. The reason this is a concern for neighbors is because many of the houses built between, say, 1905 and approximately 1905 and late 1930s, having cars wasn't as prevalent, much less 2 cars or SUVs. They didn't exist. So a lot of these people were concerned, because they might either have just a parking pad in front, a non-conforming, legally non-conforming parking pad in front, or have no parking at all, just street parking. And they were concerned that this would compete with their, basically use up somebody park in front of their house for these properties. Once I explained the sigh they were all, sigh of relief and supportive of the project. The other point, I said twofold. The other point is, David, part of the standards when they're looking at this is whether this is a prevalent, established situation, comparable situation in the neighborhood. In other words, is this condition prevalent in the neighborhood? And therefore, and that's part of the variance standards, and also addresses that some as far as the existing conditions in the neighborhood for the special exception standards. And so that, as I said, twofold. That second aspect of it is that it's very common not to have compliant parking in this neighborhood. So if that makes sense, it's a lot of these, approximately half the homes don't have any parking at all. And then other ones, we kind of did these reports. Some of these were originally Doug and Wes's cases, and I just ended up writing a staff report for it. But all of us had kind of done an overview, Cages, looking through the neighborhood, and half the houses, if you look at it on Cages, you'll see half of these homes don't have any parking at all, and some of them just have like a single pad for a car out in the front yard. So this will certainly be much more conforming to the zoning code than the existing conditions for perhaps more than half the homes in the neighborhood. I don't think I have really anything else to cover.
Okay. Thanks, Trey. Thanks for your testimony. Thanks for your work on the staff report on this.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I think we could keep moving through the properties, unless did anyone else, Mr. Surveyor or Ms. Funky, want to add anything thus far?
Yeah, the only thing I would like to add is, you might think that rather than because of the footprint of the building, it would be a simple thing to just swap out a 2-story building for a 1-story building in this instance. Well, in this instance, we're trying to make this a handicapped accessible building, which does not lend itself to a 2-story building. And secondly, MKirk was thoughtful in trying to match which buildings went on which sites, depending upon the surrounding area. Most of the buildings around this Ward Street site, excuse me, are 1-story buildings. So the idea of swapping out a 2-story for a 1-story just is not appropriate in this situation.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Ms. Edie, should we move on to Owasco?
Sure. And I think my argument, just so it doesn't get completely repetitive, for the next 4 is going to be the exact same. The next 4, same, very similar concept. It is, the driveway was built. There's a bump out in the floor plan on the majority of these that we put in for the staircase that does not allow for us to extend the driveway much farther than it is. The other big factor that we actually haven't talked about yet is in the attempt to try to control ever increasing and ever fluctuating costs for every single thing right now. Concrete is actually one of the materials that has seen the biggest exponential increases over the past 2 years. Every week I'm getting change orders from contractors that costs are going up even further. And so really, in order to maintain the affordability, we're trying to be as thoughtful as we can in our value engineering. And this was a place where 2 Honda Civics can absolutely fit onto this driveway. Can we shrink it just as much? And I hate to say it, but that 4 feet of concrete, I mean, depending on the week, could save us anywhere between $4,000 and $10,000. And so we were just very much trying to preserve the affordability. That's the overarching theme of this entire project. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it that we haven't actually already talked about. So anything else I'll say is probably going to be pretty repetitive.
Okay.
I do have,
Sure.
are we only talking about 5 houses, or are we not talking all 9? Because from my understanding, all 9 had the same parking issue.
So today we're just talking about 5.
Okay.
Yeah, 5334 Ward, 5329 Owasco, 5304 Wetzel, 4109 Wetzel, and 5725 Adelphi.
I think it's important to clarify one thing. It depends on the zoning district. So when talking about this with my colleagues, for example, some of these, I believe some of the total number of properties, I believe, fall in the SF2 zoning district. And if you're in the SF2, you're only required to have 1 parking space, not 2. So some of these, the reason there are 5 instead of 9 is I believe that the others are in the SF2 zoning district, which only requires 1 parking space. So I hope that helps clarify that matter.
Okay.
It was only when you need 2 parking spaces that the distance, the 40 feet of distance, and as Miss Eddy just pointed out, if these were little, some kind of compact, a very compact little Kia or something, you could probably fit 2 of them, darn near behind the front of the house. It's just that the zoning code doesn't account for the size of somebody's car. So, it's presuming you need the code presumes, just like a parking space in a parking lot, that you need a full 160 square feet and, so that it can fit in as, an Escalade or something, full SUV. So
right.
If these are economy cars, it may be fine. But anyhow, I think the reason that the 4 additional properties weren't needing zoning relief is because they only were required by the code. The RM districts and the SF2 district only require 1 parking space per unit.
Okay.
Okay.
Trey, maybe you could help me understand here. And sorry, I think I missed this earlier. I mean, these are driveways that are going to go along the side of the home.
That's correct. Yes.
Why is this front yard parking?
Because they can't fit the full 2 space. They can't fit the 2 full cars. We have to treat it as full 160 square foot. They just can't. They're not deep enough. It doesn't go all the way into the backyard or whatever. These aren't big houses. If these were really, really big homes, then technically they could probably fit all the way along the side of the house. But the way it is, if you had 2 full-size cars, say SUVs or something, part of the second car would extend or hang out into the front yard or corner side yard, as the case may be, beyond the facade of the house. It doesn't mean, as I explained to the to the surrounding property owners, that does not mean it's hanging out in the right of way or anything or out into the street. It's just that 2 full parking spots were not provided behind the front line of the house. So that's why it's front yard parking, because part of the car would, the rear end of a car, if they're SUVs, it's going to hang past the front line of the house.
Gotcha. And I mean, this is sort of anecdotal, I guess, in a way. I'm just sort of looking through Google Maps again, but it looks like that's pretty consistent with the rest of the neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's it. Those 2 things go hand in hand, because that's part of the test that, then when I wrote to that standard in my staff report, part of what you're speaking to is that, is that a prevalent pattern, throughout the neighborhood? Because is this like if we were talking about a detached garage and stuff, but, people, you'd say, oh, these are common in the neighborhood or something. So this is a common issue in the neighborhood. In fact, these are going to be less non-conforming, far less non-conforming, because most of the folks are parking entirely in the front yard or on the street. Here, this is going to take it totally off the street. There's no question that two parking spaces, are two cars can fit on every one of these. It's just they can't fit behind the front line of the house, and hence the special exception or numeric variance depending upon the case. But they two cars can fit here, just not behind the front line of the house.
Got it. Okay.
And it won't take anybody else's, to the other hand of that I spoke to earlier, that it also will not compete for any of the off-street parking where people, currently don't have the parking. And that was the real crux for all of the callers that spoke to me. Once they got that you could fit two cars onto this property, not hanging out in the right of way, not on the street, they were completely fine with it.
Got it. Okay. So it's consistent with surrounding land development, and compatible with the neighborhood. There are practical difficulties with the design and with cement and construction costs that make having this a longer driveway somehow impractical. Okay, are there any potential adverse effects, and this is to Ms. Edie or anyone else on the project, that you're anticipating as a result of this?
I do not believe so, no.
All right. Would anyone else like to say anything else about any of these applications? Okay.
The only thing I might like to add is to reiterate what Liz has said earlier about the affordable nature of these homes and the need to maintain the cost associated with them in order to meet that 80% target. And secondly, MKirk has worked really hard within the last few years to make Madisonville much more of a walkable neighborhood. And it seems somewhat inconsistent with that objective to force new homes to have two parking spaces off the right of way to be consistent with a walkable neighborhood. Also, Madisonville has really good bus service. It's not often that one neighborhood gets to say that in Cincinnati, but Madisonville is able to say that. So that's another factor to be considered here, I think.
All right, and sure.
Can you do me one more favor? Can you repeat these 5 project addresses one more time? I did not find a list in what was sent to me, and I just want to make sure I have those covered.
Sure. I can also send you the staff report, but the addresses are 5334 Ward, 5329 Owaska, 5304 Wetzel, 4109 Wetzel, and 5725 Adelphi. Adelphi or Adelphi? Does anyone know?
I don't.
Mr. Survey?
All right, that'll work. Thank you.
Sure.
No, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, last question.
I heard homeowners pronounce it both ways. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Last question. The Madisonville Community Council, I imagine they are aware of the project and are involved on some level, or have vetted the project?
Yes, they have vetted the project and they're in favor of it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Survey. Okay, anything else in closing or otherwise before we adjourn here today? Okay, we will leave it at that then. I want to thank everyone for their time and their testimony here today. I've had a chance to review the application materials and review the staff report. Based on that and the testimony that I've heard today, I'm going to approve all of these projects. I need to formalize that in a written decision. That does typically take about 2 weeks, as I read earlier. For whatever reason, right now we are getting a lot of applications. I think I have close to like 15 to 20 hearings just this week alone. And so I will get these out to you as soon as possible. Hopefully, knowing that these will be approved will give you the ability to move forward in some other ways, because they will be approved. It's just I'm anticipating that it may take slightly longer than 2 weeks, but I don't think it'll take longer than 3 weeks. Anyways, when I do finish the decision, I put it into a PDF. I send it to everybody who's in the hearing. You all will have a copy of it just really moments after it's complete. And as soon as you have that email PDF, you can Trey can move forward with the allowing the permits to move forward. If you have any questions in the meantime, or any questions now, feel free to reach out to myself or to Trey. If you would like a status update on where I'm at with those decisions, just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to let you guys know where I'm at. I think that's all that I have for now. Any other questions right now? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all again for your time, your testimony. I think it's a great project. Wish you guys all the best. Thanks for your work over there in Madisonville, and have a wonderful day. We're adjourned.
Thank you, David.